Here's something that should terrify every motorcycle manufacturer on the planet. Nearly 2/3 of all motorcycle riders today are over 35 years old. Think about that for a second. We're watching an entire generation turn their backs on something that used to represent freedom, rebellion, and pure adrenaline. But before you hit that back button, smash that subscribe button, because what I'm about to reveal will change how you think about the future of motorcycling forever. I've spent months digging into the data, talking to young riders and non-riders alike, and what I discovered is a perfect storm of factors that's systematically killing the motorcycle dream for anyone under 30. And if we don't address this crisis now, motorcycling as we know it might not survive the next decade. The first killer is something most people don't want to talk about because it's uncomfortable and politically sensitive. Money. Not just a little money, but life-changing amounts of money that would make your grandfather roll over in his grave. Getting a motorcycle license today isn't just expensive, it's financially devastating for young people. Let me break down the real numbers for you. A direct entry Class A motorcycle license will cost you between $3,500 and $4,000. That's before you even sit on a bike. But wait, it gets worse. The bureaucratic fees alone are criminal. Registration for your test at the DMV runs between $120 and $150. For what? For someone to type your name into a computer. It's highway robbery, and that's just the beginning. Remember when you could show up to motorcycle training in jeans and sneakers? Those days are dead and buried. Today's driving schools demand you arrive with full motorcycle gear. We're talking proper motorcycle pants, boots, jacket, gloves, and your own helmet. I watched a father drop $1,100 at a motorcycle gear shop just so his son could start lessons. $1,100 before the kid even learned to shift gears. Add the license costs and gear together, and you're looking at $5,000 to $6,000 just to legally ride. But young riders aren't done bleeding money. They still need to buy a motorcycle. Even a decent beginner bike runs $3,000 to $5,000. Now we're at $10,000 total investment before you've ridden your first mile. For someone making minimum wage or living on a student budget, that's not just expensive, it's impossible. But here's where it gets really interesting. And this is something most motorcycle content creators completely miss. Young people today have a fundamentally different relationship with transportation. They don't see owning a vehicle as a necessity or status symbol. They see it as an inefficient waste of money and resources. Think about it from their perspective. Why spend $10,000 on a motorcycle when you can pull out your phone and have a ride-sharing car at your location in 3 minutes? Why deal with parking, insurance, maintenance, and weather when you can hop on an electric scooter, grab a bike share, or jump on public transportation? This generation grew up with smartphones. They've never known a world where mobility wasn't available on demand. To them, the idea of owning a motorcycle for transportation makes about as much sense as owning a horse. It's outdated, expensive, and completely unnecessary when better alternatives exist. And let's be brutally honest about something else. The cultural meaning of motorcycles has completely shifted. For previous generations, motorcycles represented rebellion against authority, freedom from parental control, and entry into an exclusive club of outlaws and free spirits. Today's young people don't need motorcycles to rebel. They rebel through social media, political activism, and lifestyle choices their parents can't even understand. The motorcycle industry has completely failed to adapt to this reality. They're still marketing bikes like it's 1985, focusing on chrome, leather, and tough guy imagery that resonates with middle-aged men but feels ridiculous to someone who grew up watching YouTube influencers and playing video games with friends across the globe. Here's another factor that nobody talks about because it makes everyone uncomfortable. Today's motorcycles are technological marvels, but that comes with a dark side. Modern bikes have traction control, wheelie control, multiple riding modes, and computer systems that would make a NASA engineer jealous. When something breaks, you can't fix it in your garage with basic tools like previous generations could. Your grandfather could rebuild a motorcycle engine with a socket set and some determination. Today, when the ECU fails or the ABS system malfunctions, you're looking at a dealership visit and a repair bill that could buy a decent used car. Young people see this complexity and realize they're signing up for a lifetime of expensive maintenance they can't control or understand. But wait, there's more. The risk factor has become impossible to ignore. Motorcycle safety statistics for riders aged 18 to 24 are genuinely terrifying. When young people research motorcycles, they inevitably discover that their age group has the highest fatality rates, the most serious injuries, and the worst insurance costs. Previous generations might have ignored these statistics, but today's young people are more data-driven and risk-aware than any generation in history. They've grown up with the internet, which means they've seen every motorcycle crash video ever posted. They understand probability, statistics, and risk assessment in ways their parents never did. When they calculate the real cost of motorcycle ownership, including the probability of serious injury or death, the math doesn't work out. Social media has also changed how young people experience adventure and excitement. Why risk your life on a motorcycle when you can get adrenaline rushes from extreme sports videos, virtual reality experiences, or competitive gaming? The dopamine hit that previous generations got from motorcycle riding can now be obtained in much safer ways. The environmental factor is huge and getting bigger every year. Young people genuinely care about climate change and carbon footprints in ways that previous generations simply didn't. They see internal combustion motorcycles as part of the problem, not part of the solution. Even when they're interested in motorized transportation, they're much more likely to consider electric alternatives. Speaking of electric alternatives, this is where the motorcycle industry has really dropped the ball. Electric motorcycles should be perfect for young riders. They're quiet, clean, require minimal maintenance, and offer instant torque that makes gas bikes feel ancient. But instead of embracing this technology and marketing it to young people, most manufacturers have treated electric bikes like expensive toys for wealthy environmentalists. The few companies that get it, like Zero Motorcycles or newer startups, are finally creating products that appeal to younger demographics. But they're fighting an uphill battle against an industry that's still obsessed with the sound of exhaust pipes and the smell of gasoline. Here's something that might surprise you. Young people aren't anti-motorcycle. They're anti-ownership. The sharing economy has trained them to access products and services without the burden of ownership. They'll gladly pay to ride motorcycles occasionally, but they don't want to buy, insure, maintain, and store one full-time. This creates an enormous opportunity that almost nobody is exploiting. Motorcycle rental and sharing services should be everywhere, but they're practically non-existent. Imagine if you could unlock a motorcycle with your smartphone, ride it for an hour, and park it wherever you wanted. Young people would be all over that concept. The social aspect of motorcycling has also fundamentally changed. Previous generations formed tight-knit communities around motorcycle ownership. They'd meet up on weekends, work on bikes together, and create lifelong friendships through shared mechanical struggles and riding adventures. Today's young people form communities online. They connect with people who share their interests, regardless of geographic location. They don't need to buy motorcycles to find their tribe, because their tribe exists in digital spaces that are accessible 24 hours a day. This shift has massive implications for motorcycle culture. The idea of belonging to a local motorcycle club or meeting up at specific locations becomes less appealing when you can connect with like-minded people instantly through social media platforms. But here's where it gets really interesting. The few young people who do get into motorcycles are approaching it completely differently than previous generations. They're not interested in cruising highways or touring the country. They want urban mobility, trick riding, and social media content creation. Look at the popularity of supermoto bikes among young riders. These bikes turn the entire city into a playground. They're perfect for wheelies, stunts, and the kind of riding that looks amazing on Instagram but terrifies insurance companies and law enforcement. This creates a weird situation where the young people most attracted to motorcycles are also the ones most likely to ride dangerously and give the entire community a bad reputation. It's a vicious cycle that pushes even more young people away from motorcycling. The licensing system itself has become a barrier. The multi-stage licensing process that exists in many countries makes perfect sense from a safety perspective, but it's a nightmare for young people who want instant gratification. They can get a driver's license for a car in a matter of weeks, but motorcycle licensing can take months or even years to complete. During that time, they're paying for training, taking tests, and jumping through bureaucratic hoops, while their friends are already mobile using other transportation methods. By the time they're legally allowed to ride a full-size motorcycle, they've often lost interest and found other solutions for their mobility needs. The motorcycle media has also failed to adapt. Most motorcycle magazines, websites, and YouTube channels are created by middle-aged men for middle-aged men. They focus on bike comparisons, technical specifications, and riding techniques that don't resonate with younger audiences. Young people want content that's authentic, entertaining, and socially conscious. They want to see people who look like them, talk like them, and share their values. When all the motorcycle influencers are older, white guys talking about horsepower and torque curves, it's no wonder young people feel excluded from the community. The good news is that some content creators are starting to figure this out. They're creating motorcycle content that focuses on urban riding, electric bikes, and the social aspects of motorcycling rather than just the mechanical stuff. But they're still vastly outnumbered by traditional motorcycle media. Insurance costs are another massive barrier that doesn't get enough attention. Young motorcycle riders face insurance premiums that can cost more than their bike payments. When you're already stretching your budget to afford a motorcycle, adding several $100s per month in insurance costs makes the whole endeavor financially impossible. The insurance industry treats young motorcycle riders like they're guaranteed to crash, which becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. High insurance costs keep responsible young people out of motorcycling, leaving only the risk-takers who are more likely to have accidents, which justifies the high insurance rates. Parking is becoming a nightmare in urban areas where most young people live. Motorcycle parking is often non-existent, poorly marked, or shared with bicycles and scooters. Young riders find themselves constantly worried about theft, vandalism, or parking tickets. Compare this to car-sharing services where you can park legally anywhere and walk away without worrying about your vehicle. The convenience factor alone is enough to keep many young people away from motorcycle ownership. The maintenance culture has also changed dramatically. Previous generations enjoyed working on their motorcycles as much as riding them. Maintenance was part of the hobby, not a chore. Today's young people have different interests and priorities. They want their transportation to work reliably without requiring mechanical knowledge or weekend garage time. Modern motorcycles are more reliable than ever, but they still require more maintenance than cars or alternative transportation methods. Oil changes, chain adjustments, tire pressure checks, and seasonal preparations feel like unnecessary hassles to people who are used to maintenance-free technology in every other aspect of their lives. The seasonal nature of motorcycling in many climates also works against young riders. When you're on a tight budget, Paying for insurance and registration on a vehicle you can only use 6 months out of the year makes no financial sense. Young people are more likely to choose transportation solutions that work year-round. Weather protection is another factor. Previous generations accepted that motorcycle riding meant getting wet, cold, and uncomfortable as part of the experience. Today's young people have different expectations for comfort and convenience. They're not willing to arrive at work soaked and cold just for the privilege of riding a motorcycle. The motorcycle industry's response to declining young ridership has been largely counterproductive. Instead of addressing the real barriers, they've focused on creating more expensive, more complex bikes that appeal to their existing customer base of middle-aged enthusiasts. What young people need are simple, affordable, practical motorcycles that solve real transportation problems. Instead, they're getting $1,000 exhaust systems and electronic suspension packages that add cost without adding value for urban commuting. Some manufacturers are starting to get it. Companies like Honda are bringing back simple, affordable bikes like the Grom and Monkey that appeal to younger riders. But these efforts are still the exception rather than the rule. The dealer experience is also completely misaligned with young people's expectations. Most motorcycle dealerships feel like exclusive clubs for existing riders rather than welcoming spaces for newcomers. Young people walk into these places and immediately feel out of place among the leather jackets and gray beards. Compare this to buying a car, where dealerships bend over backward to make young buyers feel welcome and important. Motorcycle dealers often treat young people like they can't afford the bikes or don't deserve respect as potential customers. The financing options available to young motorcycle buyers are also terrible. High interest rates, short loan terms, and strict approval requirements make motorcycle financing much more difficult than car financing. Banks and credit unions treat motorcycles like luxury items rather than transportation, which creates additional barriers for young buyers. Here's what really needs to happen if the motorcycle industry wants to survive. First, manufacturers need to create truly affordable motorcycles that compete with used cars on price. We're talking about new bikes that cost less than $5,000, not the $15,000 entry-level bikes currently available. Second, the licensing system needs to be streamlined and modernized. Young people should be able to get motorcycle endorsements quickly and easily, not through months of bureaucratic procedures. The current system creates unnecessary barriers that serve no real safety purpose. Third, insurance companies need to develop new pricing models that don't automatically penalize young riders. Usage-based insurance, safety course discounts, and graduated coverage options could make motorcycle insurance affordable for responsible young riders. Fourth, the industry needs to embrace electric motorcycles as the future, rather than treating them as a threat to traditional motorcycling. Electric bikes solve many of the problems that keep young people away from motorcycles. They're quiet, clean, require minimal maintenance, and offer instant torque. Fifth, motorcycle sharing services need to become widespread and accessible. Young people want to try before they buy, and they want transportation solutions that don't require long-term commitments. Motorcycle sharing could be the gateway that gets young people interested in eventual ownership. Sixth, the motorcycle community needs to become more welcoming and inclusive. The old-school biker culture that celebrates exclusivity and intimidation needs to evolve into something that welcomes diversity and newcomers. Finally, motorcycle content creators and media need to start speaking to young audiences in languages and formats they understand. This means more diverse voices, more social media content, and more focus on the practical benefits of motorcycling rather than just the emotional aspects. The motorcycle industry is at a crossroads. They can continue catering to their aging customer base and slowly fade into irrelevance, or they can adapt to the needs and expectations of younger generations and secure their future. The choice is theirs, but time is running out. Every year that passes without serious changes to how motorcycles are manufactured, marketed, and sold is another year that pushes young people further away from two-wheeled transportation. The irony is that motorcycles have never been more relevant to solving urban transportation problems. They're efficient, space-saving, and fun to ride. But these advantages mean nothing if young people can't afford them, can't access them, or don't see them as relevant to their lives. The motorcycle industry needs to wake up and realize that their future customers don't think like their current customers. They have different values, different expectations, and different definitions of what makes transportation worthwhile. If you've made it this far in the video, you're obviously passionate about motorcycles and their future. Hit that like button and subscribe, because I'll be diving deeper into each of these issues in future videos. And let me know in the comments what you think the motorcycle industry should do to attract more young riders. Your perspective could be exactly what the industry needs to hear. The future of motorcycling depends on whether the industry can evolve fast enough to meet the needs of the next generation. The clock is ticking, and the stakes couldn't be higher.